And leading from start to finish and speeding ahead by as many as 26 points, the Pacers put themselves in the driver's seat, both at the macro level and take a commanding 3-1 series lead over the Bucks, as well as in the micro sense, with respect to their change in approach as drivers to cruise to a 129-103 win in Game 4. Here to talk about all those many veiled racing references is my favorite basketball writer, talker, and frequent collaborator on the Pacers, Samson Folk. Samson, have you all considered at all that your availability to cover this team is the difference in this series?
I have considered it actually. And after it was brought up, I thought this is compelling stuff. And then I thought back to last playoff run as well. And I may be a good luck charm of sorts. You also note the game one of the Eastern Conference Finals last year, I was not available to write. It went sideways at the very end. I think the Pacers should consider perhaps just throwing a bunch of money at me. Let some fall off the back of the truck, and I will write every game for them. And then a championship comes. They'll make the money back. I'm sure it'll be good. Fun game. Actually,
Was go.
I hate injuries. That really sucked and
Mm-hmm.
sucks. That was not good. But this game really calcified a lot of the advantages and the overwhelming dominance that the Pacers have been able to, which I think still would have been present had Dame been in the game. That it calcified a lot of what's been working for sure.
Well, since we didn't get to talk about Game 3, I felt like a good way to set this up would be to look at things that changed in Game
Mm-hmm.
4 and the positive for the Pacers in relation to what happened in Game 3. And a big thing that happened in Game 3 in the third quarter, in addition to the piece that I wrote that everyone had to suffer through and it didn't get to be a happy the Pacers won a game piece, is I talked about how they collapsed in part because they were collapsing too often on defense, but also how them not getting stops was contributing to some of the things that were happening on offense, namely the fact that the percentage of possessions that they had a paint touch in was 63% in the first half, and that cratered to 50% in the third quarter, which is far below what the Pacers typically average. I thought a lot of this had to do with the driving game, mainly from how the Bucks were guarding Tyrese Haliburton, especially after halftime in that game. What did you think about Tyrese's driving in this game? And I think that's probably going to be, the meat and the potatoes of this podcast, because I really felt like that was, as I titled this show, Pacers in the driver's seat, kind of the main motivating factor.
Mm-hmm. I love when Tyrese Haliburton drives the basketball. I love when he does not pass out of open lanes. I love when he takes it to the bucket. And I went back and I counted because he is being played left. He is being weaked, but 9 drives left led directly to 9 baskets in this game from Tyrese, exclusively. Some of that is his own scores. Some of that is passing. I mean, he had 15 assists, but the large majority of these are in the half court because Tyrese is going to spray the ball everywhere. He's going to create looks without driving the ball first, just as a great passer. But when he drove 9 baskets, directly the result of him driving to the left, that is huge. That's massive. And he was also very resilient in getting to the left. Like his first bucket, where he had the wrong footed finish to get Kevin Porter Jr. off time as a rotator over. He did the half spin to get Kuzma to step up. Hezid burst past him. And then, wrong foot finish at the rim. Turner was really great at finding new screening angles to chase because he's getting weaked and flipping it. And they worked really hard. And Tyrese is long stepping into the paint. And we've talked about this before, and he has good touch. And it's just setting him loose in that way. The Bucks, I didn't think they had any recourse to stop it really. And I thought I observed this as something that Tyrese is harnessing more and more. And there's a lot of easy, pretty stuff about his game, but the griminess of some really wormy drives is a very welcome addition. I thought he was sublime, and Myles as well. They were the defining players of that game.
Especially because of how much, Myles struggled in Game 3. Tyrese just
Mm-hmm.
didn't drive the offense to the degree that they needed him to in Game 3.
Yeah.
Tyrese, as you mentioned, this was the third highest driving game to his left of any game this season.
Yeah.
Myles, it was his third highest amount of screen contact in any game this season. I feel like all of this played a part in what the results ended up being. So I've kind of separated this into 3 different sections of stuff that I noticed that was different before and afters that we can look at. This, what I want to show people is when Samson's using the word weaking and what was going on, especially in the third quarter, which I wrote a little bit about this on Saturday. So you can see that Gary Trent's already shading him left before a screen even comes. This was very reminiscent of an early game that the Pacers played against the Orlando Magic, when on the sidelines in that game, you could repeatedly hear Jamal Mosley calling out to Anthony Black and Jalen Suggs, keep him there, because so many teams want to try to, cauterize the offense by forcing him left, not only because of what his finishing can be, but because of how much more frequently he passes when he drives left. So here they ended up using Nesmith as like, a get action, because they were hoping that they were going to get Damian Lillard on the ball. Only problem is Damian Lillard, he switched, but he didn't switch because he continued forcing Tyrese heavily to the left. And Dame actually had, a few decent defensive possessions in this game, I felt, for him personally. And then Myles is popping. And this, quite frankly, like, he got fouled, but this is kind of a bailout attempt. So the big difference there is the Pacers, when you watch them, will run most of their action on the left side of the floor, with the screens coming toward Tyrese's right so that he can get downhill to his strong, dominant hand. The difference in game 4, right off the top, is how often they were running those screens on the right side of the floor so that he could still access the screen. Yes, he's a left-handed driver, but he's getting to do it off of picks instead of, I don't even have access to a screen. Now I'm having to drive into a set defense, because you and I have talked about it before. Tyrese does really like to reject screens, but there's a difference between purposely rejecting a screen and putting a defense into emergency rotation, and the defense icing you out of the screen. You can't use it, and they're already prepared for you to come drive. So here, right at the top in the first quarter, they use Nesmith to come set a touch screen and then a turn screen so that Dame would be on ball. Then he's coming off the screen from Myles. And another big difference is that Myles rolled more frequently in this game than to game 3, and popped less frequently in this game relative to game 3. And part of the reason why is because they're manipulating that. Like, I think a lot of times we think that the roll or pop decision between Tyrese and Myles is probably based on what the screener defender is doing. More often than not, when you watch them, whether Myles rolls or pops is oftentimes dictated by who the low man is. Yeah. So in this case, if the low man is a smaller player, they're going to have Myles moving forward momentum toward the basket. Tyrese makes that, and Myles goes up strong and ends up getting fouled with Giannis rotating over. But that's what stood out to me in the first quarter the most, is how many of the screens were coming towards Tyrese's left for him to be able to drive left, and then them making those roll or pop decisions based on here. Myles popped because Giannis is the low man, set the screen, as you mentioned, change the angle really quickly into a flat screen so that Tyrese can snake it back to the right, and he does get off the ball there, but Myles makes a good, create separation, hit the 2. More aggressive from him. Another one to the left. Easy pocket pass where they were having him, do the roll pop, kind of the Darren Collison, Myles Turner combination that people should be familiar with. And that one was telling to me too, because you could tell that Kevin Porter Jr. kind of forgot, like, oh, I was going to ice you to your right, but you are going to the left because this is a left screen. And then Tyrese just easily walks into the pull-up 3 and is able to shoot it. So all of the screens to the left, even here's one with Pascal Siakam, they tinkered with the screening angles in ways that they weren't prepared to do in the third quarter that did help.
He even went left out of Spain leak, even motion, like moving left, getting to that floater. And yeah, I think he went left because Portis jumped him going right on a switch as well, and then he pushed left and got all the way to the bucket. It's just like resilient, good driving game, and that was supported by the structure of the offense, by Myles's shot making and willingness to put down contact on screen. But Tyrese, I thought, was very strong, willing himself into spots that he doesn't necessarily always go, and being willing to take shots there and make them.
So that first section was mainly like, I could tell that the coaching staff looked at the film and were like, look, we basically need to reflect the floor to the other side of the court so that we can still have access. He's not playing the entire game left of center. We're going to be like, hey, you can't fire me, I quit. You can't, like, I'm gonna go back in that direction on my own accord. Next section is some of the stuff that you already talked about off top, is just Tyrese's resilience to stay on the ball when he's driving left and individual tweaks from he and Myles. So this is from game 3. It's a little bit fuzzy to tell the difference between these two games because both teams wore the same uniforms in both games. But there you can see Taurean Prince once again forcing him left. Tyrese can't use that double drag to his right, so he tries to go reject it in a way, even though they're forcing him to reject it. And he's already passing out of that before he had actually made the defense commit. He didn't even look up at the rim when Jericho Sims rotated over, and now it's the extra pass. Ben, that's a decent shot, but you can see the difference in approach when Tyrese is getting downhill, especially here when Gary Trent weaked that screen from Siakam. Lopez is rotating to the rim, but watch Tyrese's eyes. Like,
Yeah.
he didn't force Lopez. He didn't challenge Lopez at the rim out of that basket at all. He's already looking back to pirouette back to Aaron Nesmith, and that ends up being a rare live ball turnover. Difference here, like you talked about, where he actually stays on the ball, uses that reverse to continue to re-attack, and then notably, I did find the help defense from the Bucks pretty telling here. That when Tyrese creates that space to continue being a driver, Kevin Porter Jr. for
Mhm.
some reason thought he should be the low man off of Andrew Nembhard. Just somewhat telling given the way that Jarace has been shooting the ball that they didn't send Giannis to be the help defender. They sent Kevin Porter off of Nembhard, and Giannis stayed home on Jarace. But good from Tyrese to be like, hey, it's a smaller defender. I'm going to go ahead and challenge that at the basket and get all the way there. Curious from the Bucks, though, I will say. Another example, Myles ends up
Yep.
using that butt screen, slight tweak so that Tyrese can split, get past Lopez. And there he actually forced the defense to fully rotate when he did make that extra pass. And then credit to Aaron, who's been very good since the All-Star break of, attacking closeouts and doing better from 2-point range. Another one where Myles, that was going to be weak to switch, which you and I have talked about. I think that's the most formidable coverage against Tyrese and Myles.
Yeah.
He does a little angle change there to make it flat so that Tyrese can just get Bobby Portis in space. And then, as I talked about, I think on the mailbag podcast with you, I said in some ways I think that Tyrese's hamstring injury actually helped him. In the past, you wouldn't have seen Tyrese create separation going to his left often. Typically, it was a two-step sidestep to his right. When he couldn't power off that left hammy anymore, he got a lot more comfortable going to the left, which is valuable in a playoff series when a team is constantly shading you in that direction. So just little things like that's not stuff coming necessarily from the coaching staff, although I'm sure there was some direction on, hey, change screening angles when you can so that maybe Tyrese can snake back middle. But that's just better execution from both Tyrese and Myles.
That's the Pacers have to be able to use this and mine this advantage. And already in this playoffs, being able to take what the Bucks are doing, they're throwing a couple different looks at it defensively. They are first and foremost walking into this series trying to take away what Tyrese is most comfortable with. And they found responses in 3 out of 4 games. They've been able to work. As you said, like this is one of Tyrese's highest driving frequency games of this season. This series has incorporated a lot more of Tyrese's driving game than I remember any series from last year, quite frankly. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that way to my eye test. And that's something the Pacers still managed to like fight through and claw through the playoffs, but it's much more seamless this time. And I think that really is a credit to Tyrese and Myles in this game. And the coaching staff for looking for what needs to be done, flipping the floor, kind of inverting some of that stuff. So yeah, well done to everybody.
The third way that they were able to attack this is early in the year when it was pretty clear that Tyrese was still limited and not moving correctly. I know it was a frustration at times for the fan base because they would get late, like in that game against Orlando, and Tyrese would be starting a lot more possessions away from the ball, and Andrew would be initiating because Tyrese just didn't have the burst that we're seeing there against Kyle Kuzma to use that hezzy or to be able to athletically split. He just didn't have that when teams were forcing him left aggressively. And there were also times where he's starting possessions away from the ball and they have clear counters to attack the top block or to attack and get him back into space. He also wasn't being the most proactive in freeing himself when teams were denying him. So then sometimes some of the blame was getting shifted very heavily to Andrew Nembhard because they're like, the offense is being shifted to Nembhard because Nembhard needs to play point guard, and that's why Tyrese is playing off ball. And I was more so, no, Tyrese is playing off ball because of number one, the coverage, and this is how they need to spring him to get him open. But also, he doesn't have the athleticism to be doing the things that they need him to do. Now, in game 3, credit to the Milwaukee Bucks because they came out far more the aggressors in the third quarter. They were really amping up the pressure defensively, and they were denying a lot of these types of plays. So some of the counters they'll go to when Tyrese is away from the ball. This is from game 3. If you look at Pascal and Myles, they're the first and the second screener in away action. They're going to set a stagger for Tyrese, or at least it looks like it is. Gary Trent Jr.'s top side on Tyrese. Normally what this counter would be is that Tyrese is going to reject that stagger, and he's going to become the stack screener. Myles is going to turn around and come screen for Andrew as the ball handler, and then they're just going to go into Spain pick and roll. For whatever reason, they kind of just turned that into a split action, and then Siakam came off the second screen, which the Bucks pretty easily denied. Andrew, frankly, kind of missed Myles darting to the rim there, and then Andrew's back on his heels, and they get nothing out of that. When you were talking about that Spain action earlier, I really liked this because Rick called wide reject stack as the ATO, or the sideline out of bounds play here. And you can see that Gary Trent Jr. is top siding him again, which is why they're rejecting the wide screen. Tyrese sets the pin for Myles so that Myles can get the ball, and now they are going into the stack action. And when Tyrese comes up at the top, he's gonna, or Myles gets up to the top, he's gonna pin Tyrese in, and then like you said, Kevin Porter Jr. is funneling him there to his left, and he gets to that righty floater. It is somewhat telling that I guess we didn't really point it out that on some of these lefty drives, and just like right there, that could have been a layup with his left, but he goes to the floater. There was one in the first hand that he right-handed, which probably should have been a left-hand layup, but that counter went off better than what the counter was in the third quarter. Similarly here, it's going to be Siakam setting a wide screen for Tyrese, and something that Tyrese had to get better at. You talked to Rick about this when they were up into Toronto, that Tyrese had to adjust to physicality, and that's paying dividends now in the playoffs, because about midway through the season, he played a game against the Chicago Bulls, and he had to kind of start learning how to screen his own man, be more physical, almost like he's pushing a football sled against some of these top blocking and some of the face guarding that he's seeing. So he actually pushes Gary into that screen from Pascal to free himself, and then ends up getting downhill to his left, changing directions and finishing with the right again. And then this was more telling one. They're running that same motion. This is a zone buster, but they'll run it against man often. If you notice, Ben Sheppard, Benedict Mathurin, Thomas Bryant, Pascal Siakam on the floor. Kevin Porter Jr. basically blanketing Tyrese, denies what was supposed to be a pass to Tyrese, where Thomas Bryant would then step out of the semicircle to come screen for Tyrese to get downhill with the right. They can't get to that. There's no other ball handler on the floor, or primary ball handler on the floor at Tyrese. So Benedict Mathurin has to put the initial bend in the defense, and that does not go particularly well. Ben didn't play very much longer after that occurred. Here they're running that same play. Now TJ McConnell's on the floor. Tyrese is in the role of Benedict Mathurin. So now TJ is going to get it. The screen comes, and TJ is going to change directions and get downhill against AJ Green and finish at the basket.
He was sublime, by the way.
TJ in some ways, yes.
Yeah,
in other ways, no. But the point being with that set of clips is, tellingly, Tyrese played 0 minutes without TJ McConnell or Andrew Nembhard on the floor in game 4, which I felt like was going to be a critical adjustment, because there was reasons why Ben Sheppard played in game 3. There was reasons he needed to play, but by virtue of him playing, there ended up being some minutes where he was out there with Benedict Mathurin or other players who aren't necessarily known as, yes, Benedict Mathurin can run pick and rolls, but typically in second side situations, not somebody putting the primary bend in the defense.
Yeah, that was one of my notes, because I just thought it'd be funny to leave those in the piece last night, but it was like, man, TJ is doing great. Wow, he's getting fried on defense, though, which he definitely was. Although he was like almost perfect offensively. He really, really was. Defensively, obviously, a different thing. But yeah, I guess the Sheppard conversation comes a little bit later in the podcast.
I think it can come naturally here.
Okay.
I mean, we can talk. There's rotation changes that happened. Those were the main three things.
By the way.
I mean, you and I talked about it at the end of the podcast after game 2, where we were both like, there might still be a spot for Ben Sheppard in this series, in part because some of those mishaps that were happening with TJ, which granted, Ben was involved in some of those, but, they tried to switch the shallow cuts, which was a better coverage that they needed to make when Benedict Mathurin was out there. Don't really need to make that switch when Ben Sheppard is defending at the point of attack. That made Ben Sheppard late recovering to AJ Green. There was a moment where TJ, for reasons that weren't completely understandable to me, got caught under an off-ball screen for AJ Green for an easy three. They switched the screening action between AJ and Kevin Porter Jr., and Kevin Porter Jr. easily shot over the top of TJ McConnell. They've been searching for answers to prevent Kevin Porter Jr., to be fair, can get ahead of himself at times and needs to have a little bit of restraint, but he's been getting downhill pretty much at will against the Pacers, hence why I think Ben Sheppard was reinserted into the rotation, especially once Damian Lillard was back playing again. Because the minutes when Kevin Porter Jr. and Dame were both out there, even if you feel better about Benedict Mathurin than TJ, Benedict Mathurin can't guard both of those guys. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why Ben Sheppard got reinserted into the rotation. I'm pretty confident. But what did you make of that tweak? He was playing. Jarace didn't play until the fourth quarter in Game 3. Your thoughts?
Well, Jarace, I think there's room for them both to play,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And Jarace being, what is he, 6 of 8 from downtown in the series. A couple of the threes that he's hit have been like, not just he made them, but in the flow of the game, they seemed quite important. Like a really nice, because the Bucks have been, this series is like Giannis is a battering ram. Let's see how many role players can triples outside of him. And sometimes the Pacers do need not the star counter punch, but they need a guy like Jarace to kind of like, hey, the defense got bent by, one of TJ or Tyrese. Like, this has to go in. He's been absurdly efficient. But Shep, who is not hitting at the same level and probably never will, is so sticky. And the Pacers, this is what their defense, even though the Bucks are definitely like, the Bucks are not the team that some people might have expected. Dame wasn't he wasn't fully back up to the speed. Like, he was averaging like 25 and 7 this year. But the Pacers defense has been very sound for long stretches of time. And when they lose that, it's when they feel like, oh, maybe we're losing the grip on the game a little bit. And Sheppard can plug that hole, flex tape over the water, slap it on. He's very sticky in a way that, like, Nembhard is the only comparable player on the roster, I think, in that regard. So obviously Sheppard is not going to be like everything in this series or any series, but he gives you a different look, and you're going to lose some stuff offensively, I think, but there's real utility there playing Ben Sheppard, and I don't think it's surprising that when he goes out there, you're not getting slammed. Like, the Pacers survive those minutes, and they give a different look. And, like, if he's going to be like, this underrated thing you mentioned, like, TJ shoots the gap on AJ Green, and AJ just like backtracks and hits a three. It's like that's kind of like a stamina, willingness thing defensively, is you just want to shoot the gap because you're like, I don't want to give chase this whole way. And Sheppard going up in the totem pole, like taking one of the harder matchups, it correlates down the roster. This happens, in so many different things. So it's a positive to me. It's not the button you press all the time, and it's up to Rick to press it correctly. But in Game 3, which I did watch but didn't write about, I watched it with my friends. I didn't think, I thought Sheppard was really strong to start the game, and then it got kind of like the Pacers fell apart to some degree, but I didn't think it was on Sheppard. And then Game 4, I thought he was perfectly fine. There's room for him in this series, and probably the rest of the series on the way up.
Notably, Ben Sheppard has yet to give up a blow-by. His blow-by rate in this series right now is 0.
Sticky.
Kevin Porter Jr. scoring 12.5 points per 100 half-court matchups when Sheppard is defending him. So I think, like I said, I think it was pretty clear that was the reason why they did that. And also for the same arguments that I made for why Jarace should get minutes in this series, because number one was Pascal Siakam's stamina. The two players who showed the steepest declines in that regard are TJ and Pascal.
Yep.
Sheppard is there to help TJ, and Jarace is there to help Pascal. Jarace's defense against Giannis was a little bit dicey last night. That doesn't mean that Jarace shouldn't play. There's other things that he can do, especially if you're going to play smaller with Obi out there, where Jarace adds value, if for no other reason than, like we said, he's basically turned into a 3-point laser after having 2 hitches in his shot 2 years ago. That's valuable in and of itself, especially if the Bucks are going to continue playing zone and some of the other coverages that they've shown. I think that there's a place for both of them. And I would also just like to point out that, like, if the Pacers lose any games in this series or future series, it's not going to be because of Ben Sheppard and Jarace Walker. It really isn't. Like, if they
Yeah.
win games, they might be contributing factors as to why they won. It's not going to be like, that's not going to be close to the top of the list. And they won Ben Sheppard's minutes on Friday. They won TJ minutes on Friday. Like, the bigger issues were kind of the stuff that we pointed out.
Yeah.
And at the top of this, in terms of tweaks and adjustments that Tyrese and Myles made, that made this more viable very early on in the game for the Pacers, in addition to, stuff that was going on with the Bucks. So I do want to show a couple things that I thought that in tandem that Ben Sheppard and Jarace did well in this game when they were both out there at the same time. Sheppard right at the point of attack against Kevin Porter Jr., able to slow down those drives in support from Jarace, helping off there from Taurean Prince, some at the nail. That's a better contest than you'd normally see from Ben, because the one thing that I can critique him defensively at, he covers ground incredibly fast. If you need to play full court press, Ben Sheppard's one of your best options. He doesn't give up a lot of blow-bys. He can be somewhat too cleanly with his contest, which is strange because he has a fairly high foul rate, but he wants to use two-hand contests and stay straight up and down. And sometimes, like, especially if it's a bigger guard who can, use a bump to get to the rim, then he's back on his heels, and the contests don't always have that much effect. That was better there. The other thing that I think that always stands out when Ben Sheppard's playing is that nobody on the team runs as hard to the corners in transition as Ben does. And also, when shots go up, there's nobody that crashes harder on the corner crash than Ben Sheppard does. And especially without taking a lot of risk, because normally he'll run that on a curve where he's not going to get caught in transition defense for the fact that they have him crash fairly often. He gets that rebound, and now, Jarace is making a second chance three. So credit to both of them. I think that there's a place, and I don't think it needs to necessarily be pitting Ben Sheppard and Jarace against each other in the coverage of this team, personally. But
Well, no Pacers fan looks at the games that the Bucks lose and says like, well, if only Gary Trent Jr. or AJ Green had done X or Y. But Gary stole a game. Really well. Coverages on the Pacers side of things obviously was very tough, but Gary very much helped steal a game. But at no point is any of the three losses on Gary Trent Jr. That is part of the appeal of being a role player, is like the stakes aren't as high for you, but you can have all the shot making, but you don't get paid as much. It's just it is what it is. Star players, the best players, are the ones who win games typically. It's just,
I mean, but part of the reason they were able to play both of them easily in this game, because I should have pointed out that rotation changes. Mathurin unavailable because he did take a shot to the abdomen from Giannis in the third quarter of the prior game. Jarace was the first player off the bench, but Jarace came in for Obi Toppin. That was normally when Obi would have come in for Pascal to get Pascal's early rest. So Jarace comes in at the 4. Obi still plays, but enters as the backup 5, although Thomas Bryant still played too. But that was a slight rotation tweak, and then Sheppard soaking up some of the Mathurin minutes. If Mathurin's back in game 4, I don't know exactly where some of those minutes are going to get trimmed. I think you just kind of have to play it by ear and who's playing well, to be honest. Because
yeah.
I probably still would have given or found a way to get Jarace on the floor in game 4, just because even if he didn't, I mean, like I said, he didn't really hold up very well against Giannis on some of the possessions in this game. But it's somebody taking possessions against Giannis. So, and it's more length when you need to play smaller.
Some of that can be according to Pascal. I know it's like more risky to kind of like on the fly change rotations like that, but Pascal, if he's having like a particularly good game, or if it's like because he wasn't as important to the offense in game 4, and so there's a bit more flexibility there, and you can kind of go to different things. So something like that might open up, because Pascal through 3 games was like 26 points per game on 70% true shooting. He was carrying a great load for the Pacers, and it was 12 points on 10 shots last night. There's room for matchups to change game by game, and that's Rick's job. Like, Rick's job is to build that structure with the help of the rest of the staff, but his job is to be able to like watch the game and make those reads live. And there'll be opportunity throughout this playoff run for these like spur of the moment decisions that might work out. I mean, Shep got up to guard Dame, and then Dame checked out, and then Shep went right back down. It's like, it can be as quick as that. That can happen.
Next on the agenda, I wrote a piece. If people want to see it in detail, what was going on at the start of the third quarter when the Pacers gave up their 12-point lead in less than 4 minutes, a lot of it had to do with some undisciplined and unnecessary double teaming that was going on. Andrew Nembhard, tremendous typically with his defensive feel. he broke from scheme pretty quickly off the bat and going to double Brook Lopez in the post when Myles Turner's guarding him. There were times where they doubled Giannis when Myles Turner was guarding him. Like, I understand that you want to get the ball out of Giannis's hands and perhaps force other people to beat you, but that's a situation where you're automatically putting the defense in rotation on a night when some of those role players were having, quite frankly,
Yep.
otherworldly shooting performances. There was times where Giannis, I shouldn't use the word double, but it ended up being a double, is getting doubled clear above the break with, 15 seconds left on the shot clock because coverages were incongruent and botched. Lots of little things like that then made it harder, like I said, to crack what the Bucks' better defensive attack at the other end of the floor was because the Pacers weren't getting as many runouts. I think they got 4 fast break points in that third quarter. The Bucks sending a few more people to the glass, although Doc Rivers said, "Hey, my strategy for the offensive glass is if you're in the paint, go after it. If you're not, get back." I think in the third quarter, first of all, like Second Spectrum would show that their possessions of how many times they were having 2 or more players crash was much higher than the regular season. There were times where Brook Lopez and other people weren't in the paint and they were still crashing. So all of those things kind of combined to create issues. I felt like the attention to detail overall was still better in game 4 than what it was in game 3, although there was probably still a few times I could have quibbled where people helped and at what point in time they helped. But did you notice anything with regards to the double teaming?
I mean, in the second half, there were a couple times where it was that spur of the moment double above the break where I was like, what the hell are they doing? And I personally, I don't know if that's in scheme. I don't know if it isn't, but it does read as like impromptu from me as a viewer. Whereas the first double of the game and Giannis's first turnover, I thought was really quite good. They had the structure for it. Myles isn't the next pass away, but he comes down to double Giannis into that. I mean, we talked about this in the playoff preview, but like, does he want to take that baseline fader? He hasn't wanted to take it that much in this series, quite frankly. So they force him there. Tyrese backtracks into the weak side zone. He reads Giannis's eyes perfectly. He sees that Giannis wants Gary. He starts leaning that way. Giannis has to adjust and airmails it over Brook Lopez's head. And it's like they had the structure to double. They had the clock to double. They did it with the right players. Like that was really well executed. And they did it while Giannis, like Tyrese's movement to track Giannis came while Giannis was spinning without eyes on him. It was just like a bunch of things coalesced into a really good spot, even though like he saw Myles as the double coming, the motion in the back end of the defense happened without Giannis knowing what was happening. So it was just really strong. And that happened a couple more times, although not to the same effect. It was just like, this is better. I don't, you and I have doubling from the right place is really important. And the above the break stuff, I'm kind of like, whoa, because he can make those reads, I think.
Gary Trent Jr. ties Ray Allen's franchise record for threes made in the game for the Bucks, going 9 of 12. You're familiar with Gary. He ends up going 2 of 5 in this game. So that's a more telling number is that his just volume of attempts was much lower, in part for things that you just pointed out. But I also noticed a slight difference from the Pacers. This is part of what I'm talking about, where Giannis has, a post up against Myles, but he prefers the left block. Here he's on the right block. This is where some of the strategy got, I shouldn't even say strategy, just in-game reads, in possession
Mm-hmm.
reads, where if Kyle Kuzma's cutting there and you're going to double Giannis despite the fact that he's being defended by a like size or bigger defender, I'd rather that Pascal just goes now and that Tyrese takes the cutter.
Yep.
Because if Pascal doubles, Giannis is going to have to throw the ball higher to get up over the hands of Pascal than he is Tyrese Haliburton. So hopefully on the hang time pass, you have more time to rotate.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, Pascal goes with the cutter. And then to me, I'm just prepared to let Giannis do what he's going to do against Myles on an
Yep.
island. But the Pacers have kind of consistently, when he's been in the post, been doubling from the top, which you and I had said we prefer. But I did say that there's a few rare circumstances where if they're playing a shooter the caliber of like Steph Curry, and Steph Curry's the post entry passer or Steph's one pass away, that they would occasionally double from the bottom. In this game, once Gary was making every three in sight, when you go to double there, that's really tough on Andrew Nembhard to be splitting the difference between Damian Lillard and Gary Trent Jr. and get there in time. So I'm guessing that the Pacers saw this and like, sorry that this is included here with TJ bobbling that pass on the cut, but it's going to set up what the contrast is here. So Giannis getting post position against Jarace in almost that exact same spot. look at the difference between Ben Sheppard and TJ now.
Mm-hmm.
Now when Ben Sheppard's guarding Gary one pass away, he's not leaving Gary. So it's not going to be as easy for Gary to be getting up, attempts from the shortest possible pass on the court. Instead, TJ's helping from the weak side elbow all the way off of Ryan Rollins, which Giannis makes that pass. And as you and I have pointed out, it becomes a lot harder to rotate on that backside when that's the place that you're helping from. And Tyrese clearly has a lot of ground to cover there because Bobby's in the dunker spot. But Rollins ends up missing the three. There is some shooting luck involved here. And I will say that there was probably not to harp on Jarace here, but there was probably 3 possessions in this game where that needed to be Jarace's rebound. Really needed to be Jarace's rebound. Why he left Giannis and then easily let that go. Bobby, I think, ends up missing this 3. Or no, he did make the 3 on a second chance opportunity. So point being is they helped from the weak side elbow in this game more than I've probably ever seen them do in a game with TJ there, and rather from the top. So
that was also Miles's help for Giannis's first turnover. That was where Myles came from as well.
From the weak side elbow.
Yeah.
It
was, it obviously didn't work as far as informing a bad shot because Rollins missed a really good shot. But I do think that there is, depending on what you're seeing out there and depending on how role players have it going, there is some wisdom in bringing the help from the other side of the floor and just trusting we'll catch up a little bit. Now, some of that is dependent on who's out there defensively, but if Nembhard is out there, maybe those get a little bit easier, kind of backtracking and all that kind of stuff. But it's a good mix, and it is important for Giannis, who is a good playmaker, but not, an unfathomable playmaker, for him to see different things in different rotations so that he's not comfortable, chunking together. This is what they're trying to do, throwing different looks. I mean, the weak side elbow came from Myles, and it was his first turnover of the game. It was almost immediately, and he threw it into the backcourt. So, yeah, showing him different stuff is important.
I thought it was a valuable adjustment for this game in response to what happened to Game 3 for the reasons that you just laid out, that when help starts coming from a different place, you can't just be paint by number. It's just not just an automatic read that you're already prepared for, knowing that they're going to come from the top. That said, for the Pacers in the long term, I would probably guess that, especially now, given that I assume Damian Lillard is out for the rest of the postseason, that when they play Game 4, if they're going to be scheming things with Gary to be there one pass away, and that's how the Pacers are going to defend that the Bucks will be more prepared to counter for the Pacers counter. So something that I was reminded of when I was watching that is the series. I don't know if you watched it. Did you watch the series between the Knicks and the Sixers last year?
Not a bunch. Some, but not a bunch.
So in that series, they started out, the Sixers were getting a lot of traction off of Tyrese Maxey one pass away from Joel Embiid in the post, and Tyrese transforming into a flamethrower out of those plays, sometimes out of reposts where he was just knocking down those shots pretty easily. And sometimes, to be fair, OG Anunoby was kind of uncharacteristically not quick enough rotating over to that, especially on a repost. But in the next game, Tom Thibodeau altered the scheme just like the Pacers did, and rather than having Dante DiVincenzo helping off of Tyrese Maxey one pass away, they started sending the player from the weak side elbow, which oftentimes was OG Anunoby off of Tobias Harris. And that's where they went to double so that Maxey wouldn't be the person getting up the shot. And then they would rotate. And Buddy Hield was in the corner. And that's how Nick Nurse responded to this adjustment. Buddy Hield basically had not played in that series. He played Buddy Hield several minutes in this game, and Buddy ended up making 6 threes. And that's the spot where it kind of shows up, because after they had helped from that spot enough times, it's not even just that Tobias Harris makes the first pass. It's that they started having a cutter coming from there so that it was even harder for you to recover back to the corner to Buddy.
Yep.
And that's how Buddy ended up getting hot. So I do wonder, over multiple games, I think that rotation gets a lot harder to make. I think that doubling from that spot becomes a lot more difficult because there's going to be set cuts, set pin and screens that are going to be making it harder to navigate and split the difference between those players.
Yeah. And the role that Rollins and Harris are occupying gets easy. It's not just easier for Giannis to make those reads if you see it repeatedly, but it's easier for those guys to make that pass quicker and more on target as well.
overall, I felt like everything for the Pacers went pretty well in this game. I mean, they led
Yeah.
by as many as 26 points. They never trailed. If there's anything that I'm going to nitpick about, it is going to be the recurring segment, AJ Green Corner,
Hmm.
and the latest saga episode of AJ Green, the inverted screener. So, to look at the film, because we didn't get to have this segment after game 3, because you and I didn't talk.
You
This,
know what we are? You know how Tyrese and the Pacers have the front runner allegations. We're only meeting together after the wins, you know?
I just get to have the job of
Yeah.
doing the nasty work of writing the columns following the losses.
This is the most overrated podcast in the podcast sphere, I'm pretty sure.
Probably so. So AJ Green setting those flat inverted screens for Giannis. This is from game 3. And one of the frustrations that I wrote about in that column, where it looks like the Pacers are just intentionally doubling Giannis. I really do not think that's what the intention is supposed to be, especially 17 seconds left on the shot clock. Giannis this far from the basket. I think what they're intending to do is what you and I already talked about. I think they want Tyrese or whoever's guarding AJ Green to be stepping out and showing above the level because they don't want to give up the switch. So they're doing it somewhat early and flashing to that side. The only problem is that that's allowing AJ Green to slip into space, and then the player from the corner is having to come up and help with support, which was another reason why Gary Trent Jr. got as hot as he did. My issue is, and I don't know what you think about when you're watching that, credit to AJ Green because he is being tricky as a screener. He's altering his speed on the approach, yada, yada, yada. But
He's good.
he's not even setting a screen here. So no screen, no scheme. Like, why are you anticipating what the offense is going to do when they haven't even done it? Like, to me, Tyrese just stays and runs with AJ Green
Yeah.
rather than putting the defense into rotation. And yet this continues to be a thing where this is now game 4 where TJ's up there and now it's another screen rejection like we had talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's getting easily downhill into the teeth of the defense for, I think that ended up being an and one. Yep.
Yep.
And now here's with Ben Sheppard, where once again, credit to AJ Green. He's slowing down. He's picking which side he's going to leak out off of, but he has not set a screen. Just stay with him and run to the spot. Instead, Giannis ends up getting a paint touch. Like, this has been an agent of chaos here, even though he didn't end up finishing that. And then the last issue is when I'm talking about him being tricky is that some of these are turning into late pivots. So he's going slow, and then right at the last second, he's changing the angle and screening the other side. So not only is Jarace not able to get to Giannis, but now TJ's having to recover with the ball moving away. To me, if you want to continue doing the quick show, almost always to Giannis's right in an attempt, I guess, to force him left, and they're going to counter with these Verajaus or the late pivots from the guard, then TJ's got to duck under the entire action.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have a choice. Like, you have to beat him to the spot. And instead, it's just like more Giannis battering ram stuff. So maybe you think that my interpretation of that coverage is incorrect, which is fine. If you think that there's something else going on there than what I think is going on there, feel free to add or correct.
My order of like the number one thing you have to stop if the screen is being set. Because again,
That's the key point. If
yes,
the screen is being set.
if as you said, no screen, no scheme. If the screen gets set, then I think you do want to be like as you want to be under, like you're suggesting TJ there. And I don't know if it's me, like a bit of ooga booga brain, but when they ran AJ off the line into the middle and he handed off to Giannis, I know Giannis was there, but I do think running AJ and just getting AJ off the line instead of him getting sideways is just like, if you don't really have the response, which it doesn't seem like they have a great response to this action. Of course, this is what we talked about. How much are the Bucks actually going to give the ball to AJ Green is a factor here. We talked 2 podcasts ago, maybe. That's a factor here, but I'm okay with having the ball go to AJ Green, provided that you're a little bit comfortable or you trust guys to run him off the line. Because it doesn't bother me that much to have AJ sprinting middle, truthfully. But it does bother me for him to, jut sideways and get open. And it does bother me that he's just not setting a screen and floating out into wide open space.
I just don't understand why you're predetermining that a screen's going to be set before it's like, you don't need to defend a screen that isn't there. Like
Wide open space.
it's one thing when it's like, Buddy Hield or Klay Thompson at a full-on sprint for, Steph Curry, okay. But even then, like I would say just run with Buddy Hield. Like you're better off with the on-ball defender attempting to stay square and you just running in a
Yes.
lot of these situations. But in this case is like he's feet away.
Because
Feet away.
then it's just defense. Then it's
Yeah.
just you're playing defense. Yeah, anyway. It's sloppy for sure.
So another thing that I don't have clips for this, but I did want to give Myles credit for is a stat that doesn't exist and is a goofy stat that shouldn't exist, but I'm going to name it and say it anyways. He had a number of block assists in this game where he blocked the ball, kept the ball in bounds, and that ignited a number of fast breaks. His defense was better than what it was in game 5. I thought, or game 3, sorry, this is game 4, getting way ahead of myself there. I thought Myles all around, and this was the piece that you wrote about, was significantly better than what he was on Friday night.
Centers are really important. Like they really, really are. The fact that we've seen Myles, he's occupied a few different roles for this Pacers team over the years, and he's accumulated new skills and he's lost a step here or there. But it's just like if Myles puts on the hard hat and brings the finesse as well, he can just give you such strong front court performances. And game 3 was not good. But this series on the whole, I think Myles has been extremely strong. And it makes me, not to get way too ahead of myself, it makes me feel better about prospective series in the future against perhaps large teams. It's important for him to be in form. And
when they play the Miami Heat in the next round, you mean?
That's correct. When he has to contend with Haywood Highsmith and Bam Adebayo. Yeah. Anyway, Myles deserves a lot of credit. That's why I wanted his name in the title last night. I was like, Myles, hell yeah, Myles.
You know what? My sister, who wishes to remain anonymous, is likely going to be thrilled because I have not revealed this on the podcast, but she took a very inopportune vacation in the middle of the playoffs. But before she left, she made an entire file of header images that I would just be able to type titles onto. Before she left, she's like, I really need to find some pictures of Myles because I don't have any. And like the way that you have to create photos, I'm sure everyone cares about this a lot, but like on Patreon, in part because I want an image there, I get listed as a photographer, which limits what I'm going to be able to use as headers. So all season long, she watches games on Bally Sports almost significantly or exclusively, I should say, for the purpose of taking screenshots when they do like hero shots of the players so that she can turn the screenshots from the broadcast into art pieces. Yes. So she went back before she left because she's like, I don't feel good leaving you without any pictures of Myles. So she made 2 in advance. And look, we did need a picture of Myles.
That's the thing. As a creator on the internet, you have to be aware of what is transformative in nature. And Myles in this series has been transformative in nature. Also, I will say in the piece I wrote, I did capitulate to your spelling of woe.
That's not how I spell woe. That's how you spelled woe.
Wait.
I spelled it W-H-O-A. You spelled it woa.
Oh, so are you embarrassed to be spelling? Oh, so wait.
I wasn't sure what the context was. Like, to give people background in case you're new to the pod, Samson and I recorded a podcast about the bench after they had won a game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I titled it Whoa or Whoa because in back-to-back games, they had been quite bad against the Milwaukee Bucks. And then the entire starting lineup didn't play against Minnesota. And they were quite good. And we were determining, how do we feel about the bench headed into the playoffs? And I titled it W-H-O-A because that's the correct spelling of whoa, in my opinion. But Samson kept saying W-O-A-H. And I said, that's like how you spell Noah or Woa. And I said then my feeling on the bench was W-O-A-H to borrow from you because I was somewhere up the middle. I wasn't sure what I felt yet because I had some concerns, but I felt like other things were trending in the right direction. So I thought maybe that's what you were getting at in the column, that you used W-O-A-H because you're like, hey, this was a little bit better. Maybe not there all the way yet. I wasn't sure.
I forgot which one I was subscribed to actually because I texted you. I said I capitulated, and it turns out I was just actually consistent, but I forgot which side I represented. And you know what? I can't even escape my allegiances. It's simply they're so well ingrained into me in the deep
I thought
recesses
maybe you
of
were
my
like
brain.
making a political statement. Like, I will not spell this in this Americanized woe.
Oh, no, I spell in the Americanized way because, like, I use the term favor in the piece. I always just spell the American way. Although that was a conversation I had with my grandma uh, when she was, because my grandma is, of the era where it was like, though, like the extra U Canadians put in things are important, distinctive traits away from America. And I was just like, I actually, we don't have to be political on this podcast. So anyway, I was like, there are other traits that differentiate us. I'll just spell the American way. Yeah.
I've noticed that does differentiate you, because sometimes when I read things at Raptors Republic, Lewis often does spell things the Canadian way, and you do not. I
Yeah.
think Blake often spells things the Canadian way as well. I've
I
noticed
mean,
with him, is this a Canadian thing, that he will put a space in percent, like per space cent.
oh, I
Hopefully,
don't.
I haven't slandered Blake here. Like, I thought maybe that was a thing that I just wasn't aware of.
It might have just been like, wait, have you seen this consistently in
I
his
think I've
writing?
seen it more than once, but I'd have to
Oh,
go look.
hmm.
Sometimes they will use the C's in place of S's too.
Oh, yeah. I think, no, I didn't know that about, I don't read Blake's work. I don't like the guy personally.
Which, to be honest, I genuinely don't care which way you want to write. If you want to write Canadian, you can write Canadian. I don't really think
For
that. I don't
listeners,
really think that.
viewers, Caitlin messages me. She says, "This is America. You will spell it right. This is an American outlet."
I don't really think that. Actually, I think that. I don't know that WOAH is a Canadian spelling. It's just the wrong spelling. It
No,
should be
it's not a Canadian
WHOA.
spelling. This is not, patriotism, nationalism from my end of things. This is simply a well-held belief on my own that when I say whoa, I'm like, there's no H here. Hua? Hua? No, it's
You're saying
whoa.
WOA.
Whoa. Actually, I kind of do because I do a
How
bit
would
of
you
it.
pronounce whale?
Whale? Whale?
I don't think you would. Think you would say whale. Will you allow me a self-indulgent Myles clip before
Of course.
I wrap this up? So, you're talking about perhaps looking ahead to future series that might be played against bigger teams.
Might it happen?
It
Should it
could. It
happen?
might be a thing. And the Pacers have performed mostly better against zone in this series than what they did during the regular season. The points per possession, I think, have been like 1.4 points per possession, and they've been zoned more than any other team in the playoffs. That trend
Mhm.
continues, which, I mean, not one for one, because obviously some teams are playing teams that didn't play zone during the regular season. However, I did quite like, I don't really know why I have just a shot of Brooks' face here, but
I
I did
love Brooke
quite,
Lopez, so I'm glad to see it.
he's not, the Bucks have been a little bit better when he's not out there, to be honest. But I did like this possession quite a bit because they went to the zone buster that we talked about on the last pod with Siakam setting the flare for Tyrese, Aaron on the weak side, Myles in the dunker, and Pascal got a number of paint touches out of this late in the game. He doesn't get the touch right off the bat there, and I thought it was a good adjustment because Myles gets out of the paint and goes straight to the corner, knowing that Brooks going to have to chase outed by Tyrese's cut off of the flare. And then he's able to do that quick give and go with Siakam getting another paint touch on the same possession. So looking ahead to that series, because the Cavs, we'll preview it at some point if it ends up being a thing that we need to preview. Their 2-3 zone is set very differently from the way that the Bucks play a 2-3 zone. And I thought it was interesting because in the fourth quarter, the Pacers went back with their starters and they didn't necessarily need to. Like, they had a cushion there, and the Bucks were playing some zone, and I genuinely thought to myself, are they just playing them right now so that they can get some more reps with that play against this defense in anticipation for what they might be seeing later? And I just really like that read from Myles to know, like, being able continuous spacing and respacing based on what happens on the court is very important, and having bigs who can backpedal out to the corner is also very important too.
Yeah. I watched a Raptors team that they functioned, the Nick Nurse Raptors, who didn't have that much shooting. They got zoned up a decent amount during that 2021-22 season, and they worked through the corners a lot, although they did it with their guards. And they really wished that they could have had a Myles Turner to backpedal and kind of reshape things, but they didn't. And the corner is a powerful weapon against the zone. Being able to use that, and especially like, God, I love the way the Pacers carve out space for bigs. Like, oh, big, such a big fan of that. Not every team does it. It's a special wrinkle of how they operate. And considering that wasn't a post up, but Rick's comments on post ups when he was in Dallas to now where this team loves a post up. Fun, good.
And the way that they achieve it, because I've talked about this
Yes.
before, but like I think most people look at Rick and automatically assume that they play exclusively 5 out, and they don't. They
Mm-hmm.
like the post up within the sets that they currently run, and Siakam has fit seamlessly into that because he is so good at getting those seals, especially
Yep.
against switches right through a screen rather than a static post up action. And there's other options out of it, but also because they're very willing to do it in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock. They
Mm-hmm.
will play 4 out oftentimes in the first 8 seconds, and then Obi and Pascal are pretty good at knowing when to get out. Like,
Yep.
we haven't got it, get out. We know where to respace. We know how to get into the next thing, which makes them a pretty versatile offense. I think right now that their team against the Bucks, obviously just one team. So I hesitate sometimes to look at playoff numbers because there's no sample size. You're not playing against different
Mm-hmm.
opponents like you are in the regular season. But I think as a team, they do have an effective field goal percentage over 60 right now. So
They're a good
it's
team.
holding up. It's holding
We're
up.
covering a good team. They played good basketball. Hell
Well,
yeah.
since you are the oracle of the Pacers, let's look ahead to Game 5 just really quick right now. Number one, are you going to be available to cover it? Because that tends to lead to Pacer wins. And number two, are you thinking that they're going to win because you've predicted in the correct way most of these games? So I'm
All
going to
of
ask you
these
to be
games.
predictive.
I've predicted every game correctly. You
You
text
didn't
me.
tell me they were going to lose on Friday. There was no text from Samson
Oh,
saying, "Oh,
well,
the
you
Pacers
did,
aren't
yeah,
going to win tonight."
because you didn't prompt me. You have to prompt me. When you prompt me, I give the answer. It's
Oh, I think we all know that I have to prompt you in text messages. We learned that on the last episode.
that's funny. The Pacers are gonna win, I think, and I'm going to write about it.
They're going to close it out.
I think so.
Well, I'm not thrilled that it's a 6 o'clock start. I'm going to be an old person yelling at a cloud. I wasn't thrilled with the 9:30 start last night either.
Hmm.
I was
Wait,
sending emails to Samson at 4 o'clock in the morning. And now a 6 o'clock start means that there's going to be a lot of people in Indiana who aren't going to get to that game by 6 o'clock because they're going to be working. And they're going to drive there. And in the first quarter, people who paid for playoff tickets are probably only going to see 3/4 of a basketball game. I don't care for that.
okay, noted.
I just want to register my qualms with the NBA schedule makers. Eastern Conference teams should not be playing games at 9:30 at night when the Lakers and the Timberwolves play in the West, and they could have been the teams playing at 9:30 at night.
Oh, that was odd yesterday. It's like I came home, Oleg was watching the Lakers, and I was like, "Why are they playing now?" I just got to wait around for Pacers. Although I did enjoy the late start because I got a lot of sun yesterday.
Is there a lot of sun in Toronto going on right now?
There is. It was so sunny today. Oleg and I were sitting out in the field this morning drinking coffee and eating croissants. And it was just,
What kind of field? And is there chairs in this field, or are you literally just sitting in a field?
I take a small blanket, I throw it down on the grass and I sit down. I'm a salt of the earth guy.
And you didn't think to take an agrarian economy of buckets shirt? Like, this would have been a perfect photo op.
It's in the
You're
laundry.
you're in the field though. Like,
It's in the laundry.
there's a picture of me on the internet standing in a cornfield with that shirt on. That's the links that I went to advertise your words in the form of art.
I don't know what to say.
Well, that's a first. I don't see that often. Unless it's in text message form, then I do, but
Oh Lord, yes, we're building up the lore here. Everyone, the result of this podcast, as I said before, is the assassination of my character. People are just gonna think I'm a worse and worse guy.
well, I mean, if we want to just reveal things that have happened outside the podcast, my grandparents do think you're an NBA player. And your mom does think I'm Caitlin Clark. So
It's on account of the muscles.
So we're doing well.
This is I maybe I should flex on the podcast because I remember when we made the joke the one time about me losing clothes
Hmm.
or losing sleeves. People were like, what is up with this guy? He's obsessed with his body or something. And here I thought I was making good jokes. You can't win them all, you know.
Oh, maybe you are. Do you have weights sitting in your room right now? And
They're right over there. Wait. Oh wait, there they are. You see them?
perfect. I think that fits the vibe.
That's
Along with your completely blank walls.
every time I live stream, every single time I live stream, people are like, "What a sterile room that is." There's not a lot going on, but I'm strictly basketball.
You should have. I'm very disappointed that you never thought to hang up the Samson Folk nose ball parchment that I made you. You asked for that as payment. You recorded a video of my article, and I said, "How should I pay you for this?" And you said, "I would like a Samson Folk nose ball parchment," and I worked very hard to calligraphy that for you.
It would feel too self-aggrandizing for me to hang that up.
You are you are very big on sincerity and earnestness, so I can understand why.
Thank you.
Anyways, this has been a lot of extra banter about weights and blank walls and Canadian American pronunciations that people probably didn't need. But hopefully you did enjoy the talk.
People like it. I mean, you're listening. I'm sure they like it.
Let us know in the comments if you like it. If you like the banter, hopefully we talked about enough basketball before we reached this point where things went off the rails. I think we did. I stayed up very late so that people know to prepare for this. I really did. I rewatch all of these games, so I hope that I can provide you with accurate information of what's going on. Depending upon what happens in the next game, we'll either be back talking about why the Pacers lost, or we'll be back previewing whoever they're going to play next. You know, it could still be, you never know.
I think we should do 2. I think we should do like 25 minutes, a short one, because people will want to listen to that. I think people will want to be like, if they get past the first round, they'll be like, okay, let's celebrate a first round win a little bit. And then we can do with to be named guest, perhaps, the big preview.
A more famous guest than both of us, if we're being honest.
Oh, big time. The very
so famous that you have to search him out on Twitter, because if you search him out otherwise.
What a callback. Yes. That's so good. Oh, I can get it. Yeah, anyway.
If I was as famous as you, then if they won Game 5, we could have just done a live. But I don't have a live audience that would log on for this. I don't think. I don't think that they would. The Indiana audience, which I very much like and value for how much that they share my work and engage with my work, I don't think that they're very online in the moment that they would be logging on for that. I could be wrong, but I don't know.
The Indiana audience is much nicer than the Toronto audience. Toronto audience is rude and mean and combative. There's anyway.
There was a Toronto fan over the summer that made kind of a mean threat about me in relation to your podcast, so that's kind of true.
Oh yeah. Oh Lord, yeah. There are some people who have the time to just be terrible online, and they answer the call each day. Yeah.
Let the record show that Pacer fans on Patreon and in the comments on YouTube are not having these reactions toward you. The only person that was critical of you was a Raptors fan, ironically, who claimed that you wanted Pascal traded out of Toronto and that was all that you talked about. Did you see this commenter?
No.
It was on the last
episode. I wanted Pascal traded?
Yes. They're saying that he didn't miss Scotty's
was up
time.
There on media day grilling Masai about his extension. I wanted him traded. Well, whatever. it did come a point where I was like, they're going to trade him. Let's talk about it. But wow, very
You'll
ardent
be happy to
supporter of
know that I
Pascal.
said that that was an inaccurate representation of you and your work, and that 2 other people said this, "I'm a Raptors fan," and that is not what Samson was saying.
Mm.
So, they came to
That's
your defense.
There was somebody who said, I said that Kelly Olynyk is better than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So no matter what you do online, if there's a wide enough audience, people will just, and there are enough people in there, people will just missing. I don't know how Kelly Olynyk better than SGA ever. I don't know what it's from. But yeah, people misinterpret things. It's unfortunate. People don't respect you as humans sometimes. They simply see you as a vessel to talk basketball about. They see you as a commodity. So they take from you whatever they want, and they don't respect the autonomy of you as a speaking person. But that's life.
Did you know? Well, I guess I'm anticipating then that when the MVP votes come out and they share who voted for who, but it's still anonymous, that there will be one vote for Kelly Olynyk and it will be yours.
I don't get a vote. I don't think I'd want to vote
I do not want to vote.
because that impacts their money.
Yep, I don't want control of that.
Yeah, I would stiff arm it. Yeah. Okay, podcast.
Yep, it seems like enough. So you can go ahead and close it out. Hopefully people are still listening to this at this point. And thank you for listening to it and not, being engaging with the podcast and saying you enjoy the podcast. I appreciate that.
I finally went and looked at what people said about my writing. Very fun, very kind. Thank you. I'm glad it is appreciated. It still comes second to the best basketball writer and analyst in the world, Caitlin Cooper. And we appreciate you tuning into our podcast. Like, comment, subscribe. It helps grow it and suggest it to other people who will get introduced to new basketball terminology, learn some things about the game, and become more knowledgeable fans overall. They will enjoy it. Thank you, whether you got into this in the morning or at night. Have a blessed day, and goodbye.